In today's show, we discuss, has democracy had its day?
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasulo and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague, Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello my friend once again. I hope you're keeping safe and well.
Yeah, what the hell, Tony? What you gonna do, eh?
Come on, say hello to our listening and watching audience out there.
Absolutely not. I don't have a joke for them.
Yay! Everybody celebrate! Yeah!
That was almost as
This
good as
show
a
will
joke.
give us the biggest audience numbers we've ever had because they haven't got Oh dear. Anyway, along with the show, let's move forward. Now, this topic today. I mean, in fact, we're going to try and get more than one topic in. We'll see how time permits, of course. But the first discussion point we were going to talk about is: has democracy actually had its day? What's your view?
Yes, there is no democracy in the lands that tout themselves as democracies, I think. Anyway, I think they probably need to define democracy, because what we think of as being democracy is not what the Greeks thought of as being democracy. The people who actually invented that word democracy, democrates, what they thought of as being democracy and what we think of as being democracy are separate things. So maybe we need to define what democracy is, and then we can look at various countries and ask ourselves, are these actually democracies?
Okay. Well, we need to get that clear definition first and foremost, don't we? So what was it? Are you aware of what the actual original Greek term for it was? Please explain for our listeners.
Well, democracy was basically direct involvement of citizens in governance of the communities. However, two big caveats. The slaves were not allowed to vote, and neither were women.
Okay.
So it only became free men. And they would gather at I was just watching this yesterday, I forget the name of where they gathered. I don't think it was an Acropolis. That's where dead people hang out, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, they'd go to this place where the issues of the day were discussed, and then each free man had a vote. And that, believe me, is democratos, the rule of the people, because decisions could be made then and there. And those who were entitled to vote voted, and that was that.
So each of the individual issues were brought to the people's attention, and everyone was able to cast a vote, who was eligible, of course, to determine what they would proceed to do based on that issue. Okay.
And importantly, they would hear a polite debate. That's very important. There were very important aspects of it, was that everyone who wanted to have the people up on the dais, on the raised stage, they needed to have a debate about it. It wasn't just some kind of polemic. You could come along and rabble rouse, and that would be that.
Yeah.
You know, what's the opposing point of view, and then people would argue about it amongst themselves. Finally, a vote to be taken, and that would be the course of action.
Interesting. So, I mean, you can understand that would work actually quite well when you have smaller communities, smaller villages, and so forth. But when you've got
women involved,
no. When you
the arguments never stop.
Stop that now. While now we've got larger populations. I mean, we've got countries with millions of people. That's just not practical. So we allow, I suppose, people to represent us in a similar setting, and we vote for the individual who stands by what we want, And then hopefully they take our instruction to a central government location or parliament or wherever it may be, and hopefully represent our views and viewpoints as a collective. However, that isn't necessarily the case, because they go with their own conscience and vote and make decisions based on what they think, not necessarily the constituents, that they are representing. So there's a little bit of dilution on the original, facet of this, where we pick somebody and vote for somebody who represents us, and they can make our voices heard in a central location. I don't think that works.
I think you are incorrect. I think there was a time, the intervening period between the rise of the population, let's say industrialization in Europe, and the rise of the internet, and where we're really all kind of connected. I think we have the technology now to actually put questions to people. And I believe there is a country, and one of the northern European countries, which regularly does. I think they have something, if not a dozen, then even more referenda every year.
I think it's Switzerland.
Right. So there you go. That's what you do. That is what, by the way, I strongly suggest is actually required to maintain a democracy nowadays. But I don't think even that the Swiss model even goes far enough. I think we should really go back to democracies.
Well, what about the
all the way, by the way? We don't have slaves now, but all the way, as we've said in another separate video we've done. It wasn't a video, it was just a podcast.
A talk show, yeah.
Talk show. But if you recall, I also suggested at the time that I'm not at all certain that women should be given the vote. So
I'm sorry, I personally don't agree with that, but that's fine. That's your view.
That's my view.
And we've already discussed that at length.
But when I say we should go back to democratas, that's what I'm talking about now.
Well, that to me, that's too far a change. I mean, the point is, this idea, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I like the idea, the Swiss model, if it can be done securely, but then you've got to be careful as to the people voting have to know what they're voting for. We discussed this as well, because otherwise anyone at any point, I'll just press the button and that'll do. It's the same as if they went in a voting booth. They got a list of names, don't know who they are, they'll just put a cross against the nearest person. And rather than realizing that is a big responsibility, if we put it online, would people view that too casually, not realize the magnitude of the choices that they're making? Because they could have a bad day, or they could be listening to, Fred up the road or Jonathan up the road who gives them the wrong information, and think, you know what? Yeah. And that's not dealing with the question that's being raised. So maybe there has to be some sort of filtering process or question up front before the vote is placed, to just not a test, but do you know what this is for? And you have to then pick, even a multiple choice thing, what you think you're voting for. And once you've just passed a simple thing like that, then you can cast your vote. This way, you've at least, the person doing the voting is aware of what they're voting for. It shouldn't be just a divine right by being a human being in a democracy to be able to vote. They have to be aware of what they're voting for. And that's what I believe needs to be implemented somehow.
You're a terrible snob. You really are. Do you know I was laughing?
Go on.
You used a particular accent when you were demonstrating someone that you thought was not up to speed, not up to par. You know what? You did it unconsciously. You just kind of step down, and I think sort of Cockney accent. Maybe
me. I can't do accents to save my life.
But you just did. So it was. I think. Apologies to all the people who are going to be offended because that's how they speak.
That was in no way meant. If I'd done that, I
See, that is
genuinely
what is
didn't
that
mean
is
to do
no,
it.
you did it, and that's why I was laughing, and it was unconscious, and that's why I was laughing again
Oh, I
because you did it
see.
unconsciously. And then this idea of we are going to interrogate you to make sure that you know how to vote properly, that too is not democratic. How do you know that the oinks don't have it right? Because
Okay.
it was the oinks. I was one of the Brexiters, and we were all called oinks, and we didn't know what we were doing. But if we had had a proper Brexit and a true Brexit, not this fake one, we would have been able to chart an independent course. We wouldn't look. Let's put it like this: if Nigel Farage, actually, I don't even trust Farage to be honest with you. The only person I know who, the only person I know who could have led this country properly in the last few years is me. And that's because no one else is saying exactly what I'm saying. But if there was somebody out there, a politician out there, who was saying what I'm saying, I'd be very happy to follow someone who would have charted an independent course, would not have been would have just left the EU, no negotiations or anything. We just leave, and then when we leave, we sort out, what needs sorting out. So
That's
there's
a
no
terrible way. Okay.
hang on, because we've done it your way and it's not really
Okay.
good. So my way would have been left,
Okay.
and then we iron out the problems, but there's no blackmail because we've already left. Number one. Number two, we would not have been part and parcel of this idiotic sanctions regime against Russia. I've just received a notification today from my what you call it, power and gas people, that my bill might be down to £500 a month.
Yeah.
What the heck is all this?
Well, that's what they were saying. They were saying it could be £4,000 a year for the average household. In fact, some will be even higher. That is the problem that we're now facing
So,
because of well, that this
so
we're
the point
digressing here,
the
but
point I was trying to make is maybe the oinks were right, can be right. So it's not a question of asking them questions. It's really a question of who's entitled to vote, and then you trust the process.
okay. But in
Like,
that case, then, if we're saying, I mean, we're not touching on the actual question that we've posed: have democracies had their day? Because why are we going through all this hoo-ha now anyway? I mean, let's be honest. Isn't there enough to leave the decision making to a few representatives within the community, not career politicians, but just high standing individuals in the community who occasionally meet together and come up with decisions that affects the whole country? We don't have to vote for them. We just trust them enough to then go in and vote on our behalf or make decisions on our behalf. This is similar to what was not the Privy Council, but something many years ago, where that's exactly what used to happen. They used to govern by having certain members of the community come together and make decisions representing their communities. That way, because they were members of their community, they could see the issues that their communities had, so were more equipped to represent them. And this could be an adaptation of the current process, because we spend a whole lot of money voting, and let's put it this way: the average person, I suspect, if they could do what they're doing now, i.e., go to work, be able to go out when they want to, buy fast food, buy shopping, live in their own house, buy a car, drive, what more, travel occasionally, what more do they want? Just be protected by a government, but they don't interfere with that. So why go through all the hassle of voting? Why don't leave it, the running of the country, to people who are more not equipped, but want to run the country in a beneficial way? Now, granted, you may interject and say, well, actually, if they're not accountable, then they could go off on a tangent and be completely over the top. But rather than vote for people in the parliament who may not even be part of your community. Instead, have people who are part of your community that you all agree with, that say, yeah, he'll do good or she'll do good, and they represent you in a big sort of vote, maybe electronically, like what you've said, where they do the voting as opposed to us.
Okay, well, that's a terrible idea, Tony. And
I
you
love it
said,
when you
I'm
just,
glad,
I
I'm
love it
glad,
when you just throw my ideas out the window.
I'm glad you said. Oh, I state my position, and then I back it up with arguments. So one thing is, you said that's what used to happen, and there must have been a reason why it stopped being like that. It was obviously not the utopian solution.
True.
Right. So there's a reason why it stopped. And I can see immediately the problem is that when you've got these unelected officials, what the Lord, whatever his name was, said, power tends to corrupt, absolute power corrupts absolutely. They will eventually become corrupt because money goes looking for power. That's the problem with money. Money looks for power, tries to subordinate power, and eventually does. And the antidotes to that are what I'm going to suggest that a proper democracy should run, because there is an antidote. So your idea of having the council of the elders or whatever you want to
Yeah,
call
it was
them.
called a council of state. That's
Right.
actually how it was in Britain.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
that's exactly what they used
the
to
King's
do.
advisors, right? Council of State, was it?
No, it was
No.
it was just brought together, and they were tasked with bringing Britain back from the brink. So goodness knows what the brink was happening
Was
at
this
the time.
the forerunner of Parliament?
Possibly, because it was 1649 to 1660.
Right. Okay.
And it was actually
When was Oliver
established by
Cromwell?
Parliament.
I was going to
That
say
was
when
after
was
Charles I. Yeah,
that was
interesting.
Cromwell's bag, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay. So the idea of Parliament, by the way, was not the kind of Parliament that this is a digression, but I happen to know this for some funny reason. The idea of Parliament was never to have people sitting in London day in, day out crafting new laws. The idea of Parliament was to form occasionally to deal with important matters, vote on them, and then get back to the constituencies and leave the running to the cabinet, leave the running of the country to the cabinet.
The executive, yeah.
To the executive. Yeah. That was the original idea of Parliament. It wasn't having people sitting there 24/7 crafting these silly laws. I mean, that nobody can keep up with because every single day there's a new flipping law. Anyway, yeah, the problem with democracy in the UK, let's say, okay, as two things. First of all, we have career politicians.
Yeah.
Which is a stupid idea. You just can't really, I mean, no society can survive professional politicians, number one. Number two, the way government runs is that these politicians they get into office, perhaps thinking that they're going to be able to do something, and then find themselves stymied by the civil servants. We had this problem in Nigeria back in the 70s when I was just a small boy, obviously. But I remember my parents talking about it. We had the permsecs, the permanent secretaries, and they were kings unto themselves, fiefdoms. They decided all sorts of things. And this was at a time when we even had a military government. And you'd have thought that with a military dictatorship, they wouldn't have been able to do anything. They'd just be directed by the military council, and that would be an event. No, even under the military, they still wielded tremendous power. And it took a huge power struggle under a general called Idi Agbon, who basically came into power, I think, with Buhari, the man who's there now, but was a military leader. And this Idi Agbon was his second in command. And he was a man cut out of Tyre's cloth, man. He was a no-nonsense individual, I mean, shoot
so
people.
A dictator, for instance.
Oh, he was a proper dictator. It was a pity that he wasn't the president, actually. He was the only president or leader of Nigeria who has ever made me change my daily habits. He is the only one who affected me on a level where I had to change.
What did he do, if you want to share with the audience?
He promulgated a law that you couldn't just pee anywhere. Now, it
Okay.
might sound, yeah, it might sound silly in a country like England. Yeah, of course you don't pee anywhere. Well, in Nigeria, big open spaces, you pee anywhere you like. And he managed to organize society in that period of time that he was there in such a way that if you tried to pee where you shouldn't have, you would be grabbed, you'd be taken to the police station, and you'd be prosecuted. And I
So
really wanted, he
the
put
fear of
fear,
God in people.
he put the fear of the good Lord into people, Tony,
So
which
do
is,
you believe then that that's a good, method of leading?
haven't I always said that you bring back the guillotine and you explain things that matters to people in a very
Okay,
serious
so
way?
so so what's your view? Just a question, really. I mean, we're talking about democracy having its day.
Mhm.
Are you of the opinion that it has? So you would rather have autocracy rather than a democracy if you've got a strong leader?
I don't think that the two are mutually exclusive, funnily enough, because I actually believe in democracy. And I believe that by the way, unlike you, I believe that Russia is a democracy. It's the kind of democracy I'm talking about. There's a, it might sound
You
like an,
you
it might
believe that
sound,
Russia is a democracy?
yes, it might sound like an aside now, but let me tell you something that's going on. And I need to explain to you what's going on.
Okay.
It's not really an aside. It's so that I can tell you this is what a democracy looks like.
Right. Okay.
There's a meeting, very frightening, by the way, meeting of the Russian Duma, which is the parliament,
Mhm.
tomorrow. Sorry, on the 25th. Sorry, today is the 23rd of
Third.
August. 23rd of August. And on the 25th of August, there is a special convening, okay, convening of the State Duma. The State Duma is going to yes, pontificate. It's going to consider the bombing, the shelling of the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, the shelling of the bridges in Kherson. And the reason that it's important and frightening is that unbeknownst to people who follow Western press, what generally happens is that Russia is pressurized, put under pressure, something happens, they take it for a while, and then the State Duma convenes, discusses it, and orders Putin to do XYZ about it.
I think the term order seems a little bit strong.
The State Duma, when I say the State Duma orders, I mean there's an actual order from the State Duma saying to the president of Russia Federation, you will do this, blah, blah, blah. That's how it works.
So they actually order the president to do stuff as opposed to the president doing stuff from his own
Exactly.
will.
People don't realize that. And the reason that it's called a special military operation isn't because Vladimir Putin decided it's going to be a special military operation. That's the only ambit, that's the only leeway he was given by the State Duma. That's why he hasn't mobilized. He can't mobilize.
And the State Duma are voted in, are they?
They are voted in.
By the people.
Yes.
How come the president has been in office longer than the Constitution allows? So
because he changed, because he got them to change. Yeah,
okay.
he can't just, he didn't change it on his own. The Duma wants him out, he's a goner.
They won't want him out because they're fearful for their own positions. It's turkeys voting for Christmas. Surely.
I don't know who's voting for what. What I know is that he came in, he fought the oligarchs, he fought them out, he could stop the carpetbaggers from coming in, he turned the economy around, he's increased the military. They're facing off against 30 nations, they're facing off against 13 NATO nations, and they're winning. And he did all that.
Faced off directly, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, so all that. So obviously, and his approval rating is in the 80s. So how are you going to get rid of somebody whose approval rating is in the 80s when you can't even get rid of Joe Biden and his approval rating is in the 30s? That's not how it works. And remember, he had to do some jiggery pokery when he had to leave. If you're saying that he's a dictator, why did he have to become prime minister and Medvedev become president?
He was the puppet for Medvedev. We know that.
Yes, but I'm trying to. I'm not saying he wasn't. Yeah. I'm saying that he had to go through that chicanery and jiggery pokery.
But he's changed that now.
He could, yeah. Well, after that, then he got the Duma, to change the thingy, their constitution, whatever it
Constitution.
is.
Yeah, very good. So he can stay there longer.
And
So he
I'm
must
saying
have
that
had some
that's
influence on them.
of course he has
Anyway,
of course he has influence on them. But I'm saying he's a strong man, autocratic man, but he still has to go through these hoops. And that to me is what you call democracy. That if actually the people stand up and say, no, we want you gone, he's gone. Without, you see, what's the opposite of it? The opposite of it is autocracy, where if you want the people gone, the leader gone, you've got to say it with guns. Like in Nigeria, during our military coups and things. That is the difference. If you can change your leader without bloodshed, it's democracy.
okay.
It's not democracy when you have to resort to, I'm going to go and break into the armory, break out guns and start shooting people.
Okay. Democracy, I suppose, is this definition that we're sort of discussing here. What actually is democracy?
Yeah.
And the form that we think it is where people in power can't change the constitution on their own.
No, I disagree with you.
Well,
that's what you think. That's not what I think. I've just finished saying what I think.
I know. But you're thinking that Russia is a democracy.
Yes,
so
because
the scale of what you think a democracy is quite broad, rather than what most people believe a democracy is. And if you've now encompassed a democracy, Russia is a democracy in your eyes, then we've got, we can call most countries in the world a democracy if you have some say in the government, although
if you can change the
leader.
Gesture. If you can change the leader without bloodshed, if there's a legal path to changing the leader without resorting to military coups and whatnot, without bloodshed, without revolutions, then you've got a democracy. Even Nigeria is a democracy, because even Nigeria, if we're going to change our leader, I think, I don't know when, it's this year or next, we've got a new president coming in. So even Nigeria is a democracy. You can change the leader without resorting to violence. Although it's a bad democracy, which is maybe where you're going to come in, because you can't, because it's almost like a false choice.
Yeah.
Look at Britain. I mean, look at the Conservative Party now. It's going through this leadership election.
Yep.
And, it's like, what do you want, doofus A or doofus B? What am I supposed to, what kind of choice is that?
Well, we're not getting a choice.
Exactly.
We're not getting the choice.
Well, you could join. I don't know what would happen if you were to join the Conservative Party. No, you can't join.
You've got to be a member of the Conservative Party for a certain number of months.
Yeah.
Before you can vote in any leadership.
That makes sense. So you don't get people just jumping in.
No. Unfortunately, it's just what happened to Labour. That's how Jeremy Corbyn got in, because they didn't have this same. I mean, I think the rules have changed, but don't quote me on that. But originally, you just had to be a member of the Labour Party in order to vote. So they got a load of people when Jeremy Corbyn was popular, who joined and were able to vote, and so he got the leadership. But yeah, that was, I think that has been changed now, and so but yeah, that the Tory party do exactly that, but they do insist you be a paid up member for, I don't know what their threshold is, but it is a number of months before you can actually vote.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, so it's like a look. I didn't want Theresa May, and she turned out to be one of the worst prime ministers ever. And I didn't want Boris Johnson, and he turned out to be one of the worst prime ministers ever. I didn't want Tony Blair, and he turned out to be a pretty blooming awful prime minister.
He was the best Tory prime minister for ages.
There's a certain amount of horrible truth. And maybe you know what? I've never heard that before, but now that you said it, yeah, I think he was the best Tory prime minister we've had for donkey's years. Anyway. Good one, nice one. So, like, when was the last time that we had a real choice between A and B, and it was a real choice between A and B?
In this country, we haven't. But then again, in America, the same. It's like you sometimes look at the people who are stood up as the candidates. Is that it? Is that the best you can do out of the
Trump
population?
versus Biden. Talk about doofus A and doofus B, man. So what do you want me to do here, man? But remember the one, you see, anybody who wants to call me a misogynist, they're going to be confounded now, aren't they? Who's my favorite American presidential candidate who didn't win? I've told you often enough.
She?
Yes.
Yes, it is a female.
Yeah.
And her name escapes me. Give me the first name and I'll...
Tulsi.
Tulsi, yes. Tulsi...
Gabbard.
Oh, pick
Tulsi
up.
Gabbard.
Gabbard, that's it.
Tulsi Gabbard.
You like her because
I
of her
like her
views.
lots. Her views are so down to earth. They're so practical. They're so, just...
This is what annoys me. This is what annoys me with democracy now, because it's not a proper fight, if you want to use those terms, where the best candidate is being presented to the population. It's literally the one who's got the most money or strategically will fit. It's not the best, and that's the problem. And
it's rigged, basically. Not rigged like a conspiracy.
Yeah.
But the system is rigged to produce a certain type of person. And if you're not that certain type of person, you've had it. The press will be against you, the establishment is against you, the funders are not going to fund you. It's just not going to work. So you won't get there.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking particularly America here, because you do need a lot of money to even get further. I mean, in Britain, there is opportunity, because let's be honest, some of the Labour leaders haven't come from an affluent background. So that's not really the same.
Where did money come into it when I was,
in America, the American
when
candidates.
I was given, I said that it's the establishment, it's the press, well, there is money involved, isn't it? Even in the UK, because we have the funders of the party.
Well, yeah, to get your voice out there, you need money to get your policies out there. It's not for free. You have to pay to get on the media channels, etc.
If they even take you anyway.
Well, yes, but if you've got to have some modicum of people skills, I believe, and the previous incumbent actually did. So Boris really shone because of his debating skills and his charisma. He had that in abundance. However, his integrity was the failing part here, because he just couldn't be trusted. He was just sloppy and wasn't that presidential, in quotes, type person with stature that you need in those positions. I mean, all the other bits he was good at. He was a great debater, personality, had charisma, he had charm. So those are good qualities for a leader.
Who's Boris Johnson talking about?
Yes, I'm talking about Boris. Yeah, but he was a buffoon.
Slovenly.
He was a buffoon. That's what I'm saying.
Charisma?
He did have charisma. He did.
Oh,
but
I maybe don't know what charisma means then.
Well, charisma is just some means of liking.
Look, he's
a
slovenly oink, okay, with who learned classical Greek or something. So he's almost a P.T. Barnum with a good accent kind of thing. That's it. He's an oink.
Well, you do need the person who I thought of late was who had all the characteristics actually of what you would expect a true leader, president, or whatever you want to name it to be, was actually Barack Obama.
What?
I thought his stature, the way he came across, held his head up high, was a good orator, would speak in a relaxed manner. You thought, wow, I like this guy. And this is part of the image that you need to represent your population. Granted, he couldn't deliver hardly anything because he was stifled. He had his hands behind his back and many things were against him in that degree. But as a person, I thought he had integrity. I really liked. Yeah, I did. I liked him as a person, and he was a family man. He portrayed that well. He had good standing in the world community. he was presidential. Look at, you said, look at the oinks that followed. I mean, none of them, none of them have got any of this presidential vibe that they can stand up and, look good. They don't. It's
Don't go
just
too far. Don't go too far
no.
because you haven't scraped the bottom of the barrel yet. If something happens to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris becomes president, then you scrape the bottom of the barrel, and then you know what an oink really is. have you heard that woman give a speech?
I haven't actually.
I don't know how she got there. It's like I don't know how he got there. But he could talk the talk. That's the thing about Biden. When he was
he could
talk the talk.
Yeah, he was actually all right as a person. Yeah. He was quite.
And Trump, I don't know how Trump got there. Kamala, I don't know how she got there.
No.
And this Liz Truss, if she winds up as being PM,
she more than likely she will.
Then we're going to be sitting there thinking, I actually thought that Theresa May was going to be like the worst possible. I thought Theresa May was going to be the benchmark for awful, but I have a feeling that she's going to be blown out of the water by this buffoon that's coming.
Okay.
She doesn't even know where the Black Sea is, and she was telling Lavrov, Sergei Lavrov, who is Russia's
foreign minister.
She was telling him that Russia had no rights to be in this region, and Sergei looked at her, and he looked at the officials behind her like, is somebody going to explain to her that is actually Russia she's speaking about?
I mean, she's out of her depth. Sorry, that she really is.
And then you got somebody appearing on someone. Let's not talk about it. Anyway. Media.
Yeah.
See, okay. So my point is this: we have the perm sex. We don't have permanent secretaries here. I don't know what they're called here in the UK. The heads of departments of the civil service.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. They're big. They are big wigs.
Yeah, they are.
Are they called permanent secretaries too?
They are permanent secretaries.
Oh, there we go. Permanent secretaries. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. So they too wield this enormous power. So I think what happens is that people come in, maybe, some people come in all fired up. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I remember, what's her name now? Priti Patel. She was really fired up about going into the Home Office and getting the immigration thing sorted out. And then she goes into the Home Office and she's just stymied. Now, I don't think much of Priti Patel, but
no.
I can understand why, is that she hit her head against this brick wall. And Brexiteers have got in. Boris Johnson's friend, who was eased out of number 10 in the end, the controversial figure.
Friend? Oh dear, Dominic Cummings. Cummings wasn't his friend really. He was out
ally or whatever it was.
Well, he was, but and he turned on him and basically showed everybody why Boris was the okay. I don't want to say it, but okay, the buffoon, but the buffoon that he was. Okay. He undermined him and gave away.
Well, that's not loyalty that I asked for in a human being. No. But there we are. Anyway, so Dominic Cummings, this is what he said. He said, "Look, there's this problem in the British civil service that needs to be dealt with because you can't get anything done whilst these people are there." So I think that like the Reform Party, which I'm hoping to be part of. I don't know if it's going to really be anything. People like that, you need to say to them, if you're going to come in and reform Britain, forget about, the big marquee item things you want to do. You want to handle immigration. You want to get back on even keel with, the world. And that's not what you got to tell people is, look, in the first term of office, we have to deal with the civil servants. We've got to get a handle on the civil servants. And that's just only part of it. The second part of it is the media. Many years ago, when I first left uni, I remember I used to read the Daily Mirror, I think. And people would say, well, even Mirror, I'm with the Mail. It used to be important which
side you were on. Well, the Mirror was more Labour and the Mail was...
I know, there was a time when I was quite, that way leaning. I used to prefer the Mirror. Now, the point is that I think at the time there were regional newspapers and so on and so forth, and I believe that we had something like 70 different owners of newspapers in Great Britain and media, shall we say media outlets.
Yeah.
There was about 70 of them. Okay, I think today is 5.
Well, I think paper has gone under, hasn't it? The problem is that's why the writing was
But
on
they
the
were
wall
bought
when the
out. They were
internet
bought
came out.
out.
No, but they're not. Yeah, but
They could have been
they're
online.
yeah, but they have to have a hybrid model. You've got to have one online and one offline if you're going to survive. And even the ones that some are still in print and got an online presence are still also struggling because the advertising revenue which came from the printed page that's diminished now because there's less people reading a physical paper. It's easier now, up to date and instant on your phone. You get instant news. So why spend money when you can get it on your phone? But that's a side
No,
issue.
it's not
What's
really.
that got to do with
It's not a
democracy?
side because with fewer people controlling what we see, what we read, what we hear. With fewer people doing that, then we can't have properly informed decisions.
Absolutely.
The number of people who've got it wrong, in my opinion, who've got it wrong about Russia, Ukraine, number of people is the majority. So I mean, look, you and I'm even aware of the situation. I don't even know if you're even aware. Are you aware of the situation in the Netherlands with the farmers?
Yes.
Okay, are you aware of the protests and what's going on? Intimately aware.
What I know about what's going on in Netherlands, and I'm very surprised there hasn't been media coverage about this.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, there hasn't been, is the fact that the farmers are protesting because their land is being sold off and being given away, or in some cases being taken by the state.
Yep.
And there's a big uproar that they're taking their food production away. What's the plan? I don't know. Are they giving it to someone else? Are they trying to bring it under government ownership? I don't know. Why it's not reported, I don't know that either. It seems rather strange that something like this, which has been going on for a number of weeks, hasn't been reported not once. Why?
Exactly.
So you do have to question that. But
informed choice now. How do you make an informed choice? How
because
do
you
you make
haven't
an
been
informed
given
choice?
the information.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I
Indeed.
said the media. So you've got on the one hand the civil servants, and on the other hand you've got the media. And then
Well,
we're stuck.
though
We're
I'm going
stuck
to
in the
throw
middle.
my oar in again. Is there still a need for democracy? Because we haven't got a democracy. Regardless of what people say, oh yeah, we're a democracy, we're voting. Are we voting for the same people anyway? You haven't got a genuine choice because the people that can represent you are what's the word? Impeded from getting to the right places to represent you. So you get the same old people churned out who are part of the establishment. So they're the ones that go in and never represent you fully. So what's the point of having it? If most people, as I said earlier in this show, if people are allowed to own their own house, go to work, own a car, go on holiday occasionally, and that's it, why do they then need to be involved in the nitty-gritty day-to-day running of the country?
So that we don't wake up one day and find that our energy bills are £500.
Well, they are, and we're in a democracy.
Well, we got to fix the democracy. Throw out the baby with the bathwater. We don't want to do that. We've got to fix our democracy. We know we've identified 2 problems: the media and the civil servants. And it's not as if these are intractable problems that we can't do something about. We
is there the
legislate
will to do
up.
it? Is there the will to do it as well?
Well, there's going to be when the you know what hits the fan, and come this winter, really. On social media that I frequent, it's an ongoing meme, if you like, or joke. Winter is coming, which is based on, ladies and gentlemen, Tony has never watched. What have you never watched again, Tony?
Which one?
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming?
Yeah.
Game of Thrones.
He's never watched Game of Thrones, have you?
No, never. My wife's watched it,
Oh,
and she
well,
loved it, so there you go, but not me.
Okay, good. Well, your
Too
household has
busy,
been
I'm
redeemed.
afraid.
Well, that's fair enough. Yeah, social media that I frequent, it's one of the memes now is winter is coming. Because when winter comes, all this talk, blah, blah, blah. And people look at their bills and go, so I'm going
How
to
am I going to
freeze.
pay this?
How
Oh,
am
I
I going to
know.
pay this? What's going to happen? You can't actually use your heating.
It's incredible. I know. But this crisis is not just UK bound, although,
No, no, no. UK bound is Western Europe basically,
yeah, it
which was
is.
asked to commit seppuku. A lot of people say harakiri, but it's
Harikari, you mean?
well harakiri. I've looked at both of them actually, and I can't always figure out which is which. Harakiri. What did I say? Harakiri.
Harikari or whatever I don't know. I can't even say it.
And then
Anyway,
there's
look,
Matt.
look
And then there's Mata Hari. Seppuku is suicide. Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whatever the other one is, harakari or harikari or whatever, that is ceremonial suicide. So that's the difference between the two. So I'm saying that the United States got Western Europe to commit seppuku. How
Maybe
Germany? How are you a German leader and you're told don't take cheap gas from Germany? Sorry, from
from
Russia,
Russia.
and you go along with that. It's your economy.
Well, I think it's all down to the principle element now, isn't it? They
No,
understand that
your
they've made a,
principle.
well, they
Sorry,
are,
go on. I didn't let you finish.
even though they've gone, maybe they're looking in hindsight. Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Hindsight. I was saying
No,
at the time, Tony. What hindsight?
I know, but they believe that this is the right decision to put the sanctions on Russia to stop Russia because
They
they
weren't
invaded.
sanctioning Russia. They were sanctioning themselves. How could they
Well,
not
we
see
know
that?
this. We know this now, but you got to save face, and it's the way it is.
Please
Now,
do me a
anyway,
favor for the sake of the audience. Did I say so or not? So you don't know this now because I was saying so at the time. You don't say to other people, I'm not going to buy your cheap fuel. That's not sanctioning them. That's sanctioning yourself.
well, you can choose to buy from who you want, but when the
Yeah,
choice
but
is
cheap,
limited, it's
cheap, cheap.
stupid. Yeah, I know.
You can
It's
buy
strange
expensive fuel.
because, and you're buying it from America, who happen to have the supply, which is interesting.
If they
But
don't even have the supply today. That's a funny thing.
well,
They
they
don't
have
even have the
ramped it up.
supply.
They have ramped it up, but it's so expensive. Anyway, I'm mindful
So
here.
democracy. How did
We've
they? How then do the Germans then say that they have a democracy? Because how? Do you know what? I actually blame. Actually, no, I want to take that back because I think the Germans were actually complicit. I think enough of them understood what was going on, and then they were green. They thought it was green power or something, and they went with it. And it's only now that the awful reality is biting them in the bum that they have decided, yeah, oh, okay, and very nastily turning on the politicians because I believe that they were part and parcel of the decision making process. Unlike us here in Britain, we were not really part and parcel of the process because we didn't
well,
have a say in it.
I know, but if there's things of emergency or things that are impeding us directly, that's why we have elected politicians to make those decisions for us. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's perfect, and even the quote from Churchill says democracy is the worst form of government compared to every other form of government. And it's not the right thing, but are we asking, and we're still asking the question here, it had its day? Because a lot of governments who claim to be democracies are, the word I use in project management terms, they're scope creeping. What that means is they're becoming bigger, even though
Oh,
they advocate small government, they're becoming bigger and having bigger reach and doing more things as opposed to being a smaller government and leaving the decision making to the population. They're having more scope creep, controlling more things, and the population is letting them do it because they're just it's the example I gave you of the frog, cooking a frog. You've got boiling water, you try and put a frog in it, it will jump straight out. But if you put a frog in cool water, it's quite happy, and you slowly bring the heat gently so it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. Eventually, the frog realizes it's too hot, but tries to jump out, but it's got no strength because it's burnt alive. So
let's
this
not do
is
this at home, folks.
no, but this is the analogy that we're using here because the governments are creeping, their scope is creeping and getting ever larger, getting their tentacles in all sorts of parts of society, and civilians are losing their power to make the decisions in
Yeah,
what a
and they're
democracy
going
will
along
be.
with it. I'll tell you
Yeah,
something. There are two terms. There's people, and there's another nice term, sheeple.
I've heard that from the US, yes.
Yes, and the sheeple are people who vote like sheep. And I marry that with part of the lyrics of a Tom Robinson. Remember the Tom Robinson band? Do you remember them?
I do remember him. I wasn't a fan,
And
but
there
I
was
do know.
this okay, and there was this song, and it just goes, the the people get what the people want.
People get what the people want.
Yeah, I think it was called Power of Darkness.
Okay.
Power of Darkness is the name of the song, and it says the people get what the people want, and then later on in the song, it says the people want what the people get. Right, very subtle.
Very clever.
So what I say is the people get what the people want. The sheeple want what the sheeple get. That's the difference.
But
And
this
if we
is
can't deal with
this
if we
is my
can't deal with this,
argument of informed electorate being able to make a decision based on their knowledge of the subject, rather than I can't be bothered, I'll just put a cross in the box.
yeah,
If they're given that vote.
I think your problem is that you're blaming the people, and I'm blaming the system. I'm saying that
I think there's a
it's almost
combination
as
of
if
both.
it's almost as if you're saying that the people. Well, you were saying you're going to give them a questionnaire to fill in or something.
Well, only a couple of questions.
They don't need a questionnaire. What they need is access to free and fair media. That you got a plurality of voices. Banning RT and Russian media, state media, and not having an alternative was the beginning of understanding that this is no longer a democracy. And funnily enough, I think they banned Sputnik on Press Freedom Day, which was, you can't even write that stuff. You can't make it up. No,
it's not. I'm with you there. I must be honest, right? If we as a democracy are saying we uphold democracy, freedom of speech, everything that entails, we can't then go in and just close down news outlets. And let's be honest, how many people were watching it anyway in this UK?
I think it was a very important. I mean, it still is, because they shut it down, but I've got access. I don't know everybody else has got access.
You can still get it if you really want to.
Access.
But it just seems silly that, and it's you're saying you're a democracy, so you are proponent of freedom of speech, but then you can close down something like that
without going to court, by the way,
without anything.
Without going to court. You seize people's property. What happened to private property? The concept of the laws protecting private property, when you just seize people's properties.
See, that's not good.
And you didn't go to court. You know what? You can't even say it's a kangaroo court. If you go to a kangaroo court, it's not good. But here, you didn't even go to court. This poor woman, Alina Lip.
I know you keep bringing her name up, but you can't use her as a single. She's an edge case. You can't. If there was more people that had this same problem, then yes.
What about the guy from? What about
the UK guy? Yes, I know. That's the one. I'm more
how many edge cases
then
stops making an edge case? I mean, people are getting. What was I going to say? I was going to say that these people are getting themselves into trouble with the government without an actual accusation. They're not facing an accusation. But what's the accusation? What am I being accused of? You've taken my house. You closed my bank account. On the basis of what?
Wasn't he? Sorry, for the benefit of our listeners who aren't aware of what this is, what we're just talking about.
Sorry, that's a bit of an in-house.
Yeah. There's an English chap. I mean, fill in the blanks if I get this wrong, Tyre. But he English-based, but he went over to Donbass, and he's a YouTuber, and he's reporting of what he's seeing and uploading it to YouTube. He has been sanctioned, and so all his assets have been captured. Everything in the UK has been frozen, bank accounts, the rest of it, because the government have said he's sympathizing with the Russian viewpoint.
Yes.
Well, so he's a YouTuber. He's not even got a massive following. But
that's not the problem, Tony. The problem is, what law has he broken?
Well, this is the question.
That's what I'm saying. That you need a law.
Even gone to court. Yes.
What law? What has he been accused of? Yeah, okay, I support Russia. Dyer supports Russia. And? Am I breaking the law? Are you going to take my house? Are you going to close my account? What law? I mean, what am I? I'm not even. The thing that freaks me out and says we don't have democracy, that he hasn't even been accused in a court of law of something. What has he done wrong? What crime has he committed? What is he being punished for? He's been punished for someone's opinion that he
For
supports.
propaganda, perhaps, but they
For,
haven't spelt that out. The fact it just seems a heavy-handed response.
what do you mean propaganda? It's
No.
propaganda.
Let's
It's
say
propaganda against the law. No, it's
no. It's
propaganda.
not. It's not.
Well,
Is it?
so then again, so what law?
Well, this is what I
Is it?
mean. It seems heavy-handed to sanction someone on those grounds alone, unless we're not being given the full picture of what else he's done. Obviously, that's an unknown. We've only managed to scrape together what he's been accused for, and he doesn't know it, and that's what he said. But could he be hiding something? Has he done something we don't know about?
Well,
But
that's not the way
on the face of
democracy.
it,
That's not how democracy works. We don't know. You've got to know what the
no,
heck you're
you
being
and I
accused
don't
of.
know. The government may know. We don't know.
Yeah, but he hasn't been accused of it, has he? He's
I know,
not gone to
that's
court.
the
It's
thing.
like,
It's
where's
not
the court
public.
order? Where's
Yeah.
the court thing? Where hey, due process. That's all. That's those
You're
two
right.
words.
You're right.
Those two words just makes it all over. It's done and dusted. Due process.
That's doing something. What the government appear to have done. Now, obviously, I still want more information on this, but it does sound rather strange. Our government is doing something to its own citizen that our government and our country accuse some of these tin pot regimes from doing,
Banana
and we're
republics.
doing it, and that's really worrying. Because unless they actually come out and say, look, these are the reasons why this guy is being sanctioned, and we're bringing him to court for this XYZ, that's fine, as long as you are, as you rightly say, following due process and actually going through the right channels, not by just sanctioning him and just closing him down. And I mean, unless there is some state secret, something that he's done, like I said, we are totally unaware of. But at least put it in the public domain and say, look, don't be put off. We're not doing something, dodgy here. We're just having to do this with this individual because of other reasons which are more sensitive than you actually been made aware of. If they come back with something like that, you sort of, okay.
No, I would never agree to that.
Well, you actually did agree to that.
No, I never did. If you got something,
can I take you back on that? On the last show we recorded, I said to you that if you were in the Secret Service and you'd killed some individuals and the press came up to you, you actually said it's secret business. You pretended to be that person who, if you kill people, so what? It's part of national security. So and you're now saying, oh no, they shouldn't do that. Well,
that is a very giant leap. You're talking about that. We as a state, we should never give up our positions or operations on secret secret
grounds
service
of secret,
or military. That you don't comment. You say no comment, right? So you order someone knocked off or something, and it's a secret. You just say no comment.
Okay.
Right? What you don't then I don't know what you mean by I'm going to grab somebody's property and close his bank account and then say no comment.
Could he be a mole?
Well, if it's a mole, then you say that's okay. So then you say
then you can't say anything, can
hold
they?
on. Yeah, then using my rules, what you then say is very sorry, that's state security matter.
Yeah, that's what we want to see or hear.
Yeah. Well, so at least it's something. It's better than nothing. What we've got now is absolutely nothing. It's like for the stated reasons. They stated their reasons. The stated reason is that the guy is a propagandist for Russia. And I'm saying that's not against the law. Abramovich's properties were seized, taken away from him and seized on the basis that he was Putin's friend. That's what the government said. Because you're Putin's friend, we're taking your properties away. Was that against the law?
Which again is very dodgy, really.
Well, of course, because that was the thin edge of the wedge, and is now affecting British citizens. When you let people get off with things like that, you are next.
This is part of
Germany is
what
interesting.
we're saying.
Yes,
Are
Germany
we a
is
fascist state now? Are we moving to
the
fascism?
West. The West. Look,
Mm,
Germany is now saying, I don't know, okay, that's going too far. It's not Germany. It was the leader of one of the districts. Now, there's a proper name for the district. I can't remember what it's called. It's not a canton. I think that's French, right?
I don't know.
They've got this, like we've got county councils. They've got their districts. I can't remember what they're
Okay.
called.
Okay.
It's like Bavaria or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Bavaria is a state within, I
okay,
believe,
so is it a state?
I
Okay,
think it's a
so
state.
the
Yeah. All
leader
right.
of this state was saying that if you if you protest against rising costs of fuel,
Right.
uh, you are a state an enemy of the state.
What?
You're an enemy of the state, and you are working against the German unity and so on and so forth. And he wants people
Goodness
to be
me.
sanctioned for that. So basically, our £500, bring it back to Britain now. Our £500 fuel bill. If I go out and say something about it, I'm an enemy of the state. That's not democracy, man.
No. If that is true,
Oh
if
yeah,
that
yeah.
is true, then that is awful. We are.
He's just a man, though. He's not. It's not the state. He's this
Yeah.
chap saying we should.
Hmm.
Now people have jumped on him like, "Why you nuts?" But who knows?
Yeah. It's quite a scary situation. Now, I know we touched on this before, but when a country is deemed in an act of war, then obviously the government does introduce emergency powers during the conflict, etc., etc. So there will be some which on the surface look like not arcane rules, but decision making seems a bit, whoa, that's not very democratic, blah, blah, blah. But that's when you're on a war footing. We're not in a war footing here,
Mm.
but it's almost like we're fighting a proxy war in Ukraine because although we haven't got boots on the ground, thank goodness,
Yet,
we're still sending equipment there.
why did you say no?
We haven't got feet on the ground.
No,
No,
we think special forces are. We people like me
no,
think
no,
people like
no,
me think special forces are in there.
no, they're not.
Anyway, the
They're
important
not.
thing. What about this?
If they get
Is he
caught, that would be
serving?
it. World War Three. So no, they won't have sent them.
Well, I mean, this is
No, not
past. They're not
sanctioned.
active. They're not active.
Well, even if they
They'll
were,
always take them off active service. Take them off, and then when they get back, it's understood. Shaking a hand, nod and a wink.
yeah. But if they get caught, plausible deniability. We
Yeah,
didn't
plausible
send them,
deniability. Yeah, of
but
course.
then they're not there then. Unless the state, no, they're not. Think
Well, they're
about
not
it.
there officially.
You
Let's
could
put
get
it like that.
mercenaries to do that. So
Exactly.
it's not official. So
Yeah.
that doesn't count. But this is what
Okay.
I'm saying. You a
What about
proxy
this
war.
general? Is it an active general or a previous?
Exactly.
No, the guy yesterday, who was yesterday the day before, who was saying that British armed forces members should start talking to their families and explaining the reality that we might be at war with Russia soon.
Who said this? Anyway, this is nothing. This is not a topic of
It's a
democracy, by the
democracy that
way.
we're going into war. We're not. You're not even aware of it, and you were saying that you want to be well informed, and you don't know who this guy was. Do you even know about it?
No, I wasn't even aware of that. Although, to be fair, I've been so rushed off my feet the last 3 days.
Yeah.
I haven't been,
Tony's an
literally.
international traveler, man, guys. When I read his schedule makes me tired. Okay, never just reading his schedule it tires me out.
I'm mindful of the time here. By the way, we didn't even have the opportunity to discuss a second topic. We've just been talking on this one exclusively, which is fine. But we would have liked to introduce more topics here, but this one has taken up the bulk of our show. But the summary that I'd ask you to give. What's your view? Is democracy, has it had its day? Are we really still championing democracy around the world, or is it taken a different form?
We don't have a proper or true democracy any longer, and if we're not careful, we will lose it forever, but I don't think we've lost the war.
Okay. So we're basically, by the sounds of it, we're sleepwalking into something else. We're sleepwalking away from democracy.
Absolutely.
Without us being aware of it. And yes, I'm agreeing with you. Although what I dislike, just to summarize, what I dislike is the way that we're pointing fingers at other nations who don't have democracies as far as ours are concerned, but the lines are blurring now because we're doing things which we accuse them of doing. So we don't really have any integrity to stand up with because we're doing some of the things that we accuse them of. And that's not democracy. And so the lines are blurred and we've lost our moral ground because we could have used it quite well at one point because we give people their voice, we have integrity, we stand by certain ideals, and we don't have any dictatorship. But unfortunately, things are starting to blur, as we've already touched on, where governments are getting this scope creep of power and it's eroding away from the individuals. And that's not a good thing to be, especially these stories that you've eloquently shared about this chap in a British citizen being sanctioned for no apparent reason, unless that comes to light later.
I'm not
What we know
legal.
today.
It's my saying one legal reason. I'm not saying no apparent reason.
Yeah,
There
but
is an
no
apparent
legal
reason.
reason.
But
Yeah.
what's the law? So he's not a general. It's
Okay.
Warrant Officer Paul Carney, Carney, and I'm reading this from the Daily Mail newspaper,
Okay.
published 21st of August. That was yesterday. And this Warrant Officer Paul Carney has urged troops to warn their loved ones that Britain maybe went into war against Russia. And he did that in the monthly column for Soldier magazine. So he's published it in a presumably well-read military sort of magazine or something.
Worrying times indeed. Okay. Right. With that, unfortunately, we have reached the end of the show for another week.